It up. All right. We're back once again. Stay hired Sunday. A wonderful Sunday morning. I am a little hype. I am a little excited. I will tell you, myself as a diehard Michigan Wolverines fan, it feels good. Five losses all year, and to beat Ohio State in the fashion we beat them. I'm giving you a little too much now. I'm going to dive deeper into that probably tomorrow on Tackle and Turnover T-Word. But today, as promised, as I promise to you guys every day, we're going to go a Stay Hired Sunday, sort of a shortened version of it. We're not going to go to full 30 minutes here, but we are going to give you some tips, as we always do every Sunday, to make it so you're doing the little things, you're sprinkling the little things in regards to how you go about having your job and turning that job that you want into a career that's very rewarding. So before we get there, let me just get through this one announcement, only one announcement today. patreon.com/as144. We're officially here in December 2024. And as we get to 2025, I will be exclusively sharing content with Patreon members. So make sure you get in that as soon as possible. That's going to be how I roll. There's way too much content that I have out there on me for me to continue to just work with freeloaders. We're going to work with folks that are actually paying something, and they've shown that they have a level of commitment towards getting better. All that before I get too started. Kimberly, any new announcements, anything going on? How was your Thanksgiving? All that good stuff. Just give us an update.
Just update. Thanksgiving was good. Got to spend it with the family. I traveled a little bit. Going to see my grandkids today. So it was awesome. It was awesome. Ready to start the new week. Fresh. I always like to start it with you, Swan.
Yes.
Sundays is the best.
Yes. All right. So you guys see the topic. You see exactly. I'll put it in the description today. We are speaking today on how to speak up during meetings. And I cannot tell you how important this concept is, because there's a lot of folks out there who have a lot of great ideas, a lot of legitimate concerns, a lot of things that would be beneficial. When I say people, I mean particularly employees and people that have jobs, and the folks that are working every 2 weeks or struggling, paying rent, whatever it is. A lot of you guys have great things that you want to suggest or offer to your employer or to your company, whatever it is, but you don't speak up during the meetings because of whatever the reason is. And again, I've been there. Believe it or not, I grew up a very shy, reserved kid that maybe didn't feel like speaking up was in my place and all that. So we're going to talk about some tips and some strategies on how you can go about doing that. So, before I give you the mic, Kimberly, I'm going to describe the story that I told. I believe it was about 4 or 5 days ago now. If you guys go look up the video titled "Closed Mouths Don't Get Fed" by As1, you'll hear me kind of flesh out a situation that I had at my job where I teach. For those of you who don't know, I teach at the school named the Center for Creative Education. And we are a brand new startup school. We are, again, whenever you're talking about startup, anything, particularly dealing with kids, you're not going to have everything perfect. It just won't happen. Even for the companies that have been around for years, if you're talking about kids and families and developing them, it won't be perfect. Everybody knows that. We know that going in. So luckily, we've been blessed to be in a situation where I can have a conversation with the owner of the school, with the person that runs the board and is responsible for making these decisions. So we all had a meeting, as we do every Thanksgiving. That Monday, it was the Monday, because it was the Monday this past week. We all had a meeting. He laid out everything. He laid out what the plans was for the school, yada, 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 yada. And then he opened it up for suggestions. And what bothered me about this meeting is the fact that it was myself and a couple other colleagues, only like a handful of us, Kimberly, that actually offered some suggestions and offered some input and spoke up. And what really actually made me think about this topic was one of those colleagues, shout out to Shay if you're listening, she came to me, and it was another guy that spoke. She said, "You guys made some really solid points. Thank you for speaking up." Like, she was appreciative of the fact that we spoke up in a situation that clearly isn't perfect. And as I got to thinking, I'm like, okay, well, why didn't everybody else speak up? Why is that a problem? Why? How can we solve this issue of speaking up during meetings? So as always, guys, I call my HR expert over here. I shoot her a text and I say, "Hey, man, we got something to digest here, man," because it frustrates people, not just the owners, but it clearly frustrates the colleagues, the folks that are working in the jobs that want to see the place successful. So your take on that, and then we'll dive into some tips.
Sure. So let me ask you a quick question. So why did you feel confident to speak up? What made you know that you could speak up and wouldn't get any kickback from that?
Me personally, my previous experiences, okay, and I've had a ton of different jobs and I've seen a lot of businesses go under. So what makes me speak up in that moment is the fact that I know I'm doing the owner a favor. I'm doing the quote unquote leader, the quote unquote boss. I'm helping him just much as I'm helping myself by making him aware of legitimate concerns. So the short answer
Okay.
is I know he's benefiting from hearing what I have to say.
Okay. So the fear of speaking up comes from many different ways. A lot of times the employees don't feel confident enough, like their idea might not be good enough, is one example. Or
Mm-hmm.
they don't feel safe enough to where they would not get any type of feedback where you shouldn't say anything during meetings. You should just stay quiet. Because a lot of companies have that culture where if you speak up, you put yourself in the spotlight, and that's not going to be good for you.
Hmm.
And so that just means that's not the place for you, but that's what happens. And
Mm-hmm.
so that fear of speaking up is ingrained. It's not necessarily from where you're working. It's from where their previous experience where they may have spoke up or seen someone speak up, and then either they got in trouble or they got fired or it was laughed at. And
Mm-hmm.
so really, number one, have the confidence. We're in this in any industry. You're gonna, what your expertise is, you're gonna have good ideas, and that is the greatest thing about having diverse of thought and a diverse group of people is that you can get better ideas. So be confident about it. If they don't like it, okay, move on. Don't be afraid to speak up because, like you said, it's never going to change. I always say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same result. And it's true.
Mm-hmm.
So be confident, be brave, be bold, and speak up. If you can't get there, talk to your manager beforehand and get some tips or tricks for someone that you trust that's at the company that you work for or your own company. In some cases, some people are just shy, but just know if you don't like something, if nothing's said, it's always going to stay the same. So then you can't complain because then it's your fault because you're not speaking up.
All right, so it's really a kind of, I don't know what the word, maybe int- interesting, a little bit nostalgic because I was in the meeting. The fact that you brought up the word culture, because as we were going around this round table of what the issue is and what the problems is and what are the issues that we're seeing within our own organization, the word culture came up literally every other word. We don't have a culture. We don't have a culture. The culture needs to be this. The culture needs to be that. So as you're talking, I looked up I want to get a dictionary definition, a full definition of the word culture, and I'm going to read it out loud. It says the customary beliefs, social forms, and material traits of a racial, religious, or social group. Now, when you look at that, and I think that's probably the best definition that you can have from it. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that definition, if you want to add anything.
So for that is true. That is
Mm-hmm.
part of it for a workplace, because that speaks to that diversity of thought.
Mm-hmm.
And when people say culture in a workplace, what they really mean is how do I feel when I go to work every day?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
How does my employer make me feel? Are we dependable? Can I
Mm-hmm.
depend on you? Can I have confidence that you're going to do the right
Mm-hmm.
thing by me? You
Right.
know, um, am I happy coming to work? And what would make me happy? Because some people are going to complain no matter what you do.
Got it.
So when you think culture, I even think expand that train of thought. It is
Mm-hmm.
all of those things, but
Mm-hmm.
it's more focus on um, coming together as a team. Think about your tribe. You
Right.
know, that's how it should feel like,
Mm-hmm. All
and
right.
still get
So
things done professionally,
yeah, and
right?
well,
So,
you beat me to it because that's what I was going to ask you. We could be sitting here talking about it, but actually aligning the professional things and the actual things that need to be done from a business standpoint. Because
mm,
this is why, again, shout out to Bob if you're listening. Why I've gained a lot of respect for him, and that's saying a lot because there's a lot of quote unquote bosses I've had that I can give a shit about, that I can go on a rant about. But he's one of the few that really does have it in his head that, hey, he's going to be what he does and he's going to sort of be hands off and let other people kind of open the door for other people to do what their expertise is. And what
Hmm.
I've seen happen is the culture and everything that you talked about is sort of, it gets a little confusing because we have to align it with the professional setting. All right. So when
Hmm.
you're talking about aligning everything you just laid out, or even everything that was laid out in the definition between your trades, racial, religious, social group, all of those things, what are the things that one could be doing to maybe align it with what needs to be done professionally? Because I could even give you the example, since we're talking about the school, is one of the things that I brought up that really actually does bother me, because I spend so much of my time with the actual kids, is when kids leave. I get it's a startup school, and I get we don't, we have a bus and parents leave, and a lot of the communities that we're serving are single parent households and they have to move and all that. Like all that part, you get. But when it comes to certain kids, and I won't put their name out there, when they left because of reasons of or problems that they may have had with a particular teacher, or because a particular teacher left, or whatever it is we're doing professionally that's leading to these kids leaving, hey, we got to know these kids. We as teachers got to know them.
Hmm.
We care about them. We want to see them successful, and we don't want to see them leaving. How would you suggest that, or whether it's owners or whether it's employees, you could speak to both sides, align a quote unquote culture with quote unquote this needs to be done professionally? What are some of the
Hmm.
steps that you can kind of at least give, or some lines that you can draw between those two?
So before the kids left, right?
Hmm.
How did you see signs? Were there things that were happening with maybe the child or the parent? Did you see things happening prior to them exiting the program?
So there's been so many that each one is individualized. So
Right. It's
the,
going to be different.
yeah,
Yeah.
the answer is yes for some, and then no for some of the others. Some of the other ones, it's had nothing to do with the us as administrators. There were some moms out there just doing some when I say it was some vindictive stuff, I mean things
Right.
like just picking up and leaving, they're pregnant and not even telling the dad. Stuff that, again, we would be on here
Right.
for another hour. We
Stuff
as
stuff
staff,
that you can't control. Right.
we can't
Yes.
control. But the
Right.
ones that hurt, like to this day, bother me to this day, are the kids that, if I knew that this was an issue and I was to talk to the parent, I could have potentially done something to convince that parent to keep their kid here because of what we're building for the future. That's what I'm talking.
Yeah. So 80/20. That's what I call it. It's the
Yeah.
80/20 rule. Because you're not going to be able to get that 20% no matter what you do. So you have
Yes.
to let that go because it'll weigh on you because you want
Hmm.
everybody to feel it. But concentrate on the 80%. So that 80% that you knew
Right.
something was happening, there is some dissension, there is some unhappiness. You gotta tackle that head on. Say, hey, I know there's some issues. Let's talk it out. Let's work it out. Let's see what's going on and how we can fix it
Hmm.
by being open and direct about it and being open to discussion and problem solving as opposed to finger pointing. Well, you said this or I did this or you.
Hmm.
So just draw it all in the line and just say, I want this to work out. What
Hmm.
can we do? What can we do to make it work out? Because what you learn is that being right is not as important as saving the relationship. That relationship could be a work relationship, personal relationship. So sometimes you just suck it up,
Hmm.
save the relationship and find out what's wrong and then just fix it. Now, this sounds easy in theory.
Yes.
I know there's some things that you're not going to be able to fix though, and that's part of that
Hmm.
20-year-old, right? And so it starts there. It starts with open dialogue and conversations and not being afraid to say, whether it's on the teacher side or on the parent side, just saying what's wrong. And the same applies to the workplace.
Hmm.
Because would you rather stay in a bad situation? Well, you see what happens. People leave. And it's the same as employees. They just quit companies.
Hmm. Are you able to
They,
provide any examples that you may have gone through, whether it's a client or even in your own experience, where the 80/20 rule was applied? Because I've heard that rule used, but it's mostly rule used in relationships when you're actually courting someone and you're thinking about if someone's a potential suitor. But in the
mhm.
business world, it's not something that I hear very
You've
frequently.
heard?
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
you just
it's
hit
the same.
hit some breaking news, especially applying 80/20 to the business world. It's something
Yes.
that is actually new for me. Yeah. So
Yep.
please, well, the mic is
Yeah.
yours for that.
Yeah. I've used it a lot actually. So,
Hmm.
the companies use employee opinion surveys, right? And, it's supposed to be anonymous where you say, hey, this is what I want, kind of like your meeting, but you're doing it over a form on the internet. So
Hmm.
each department, each area gets their own results back, and you have to look at your results. Do we support your growth in the organization? As a question. So they have maybe 10 or 15 questions, and then it kind of gives you a game plan on what to work for. It doesn't matter if you made all of those things perfect. If I made the culture perfect, if I gave them a raise every month, if I,
Hmm.
had games and fun every month, all of
Hmm.
those things really doesn't make a difference for 20%. And 9 times out of 10, the people with the real issues, they're not even taking the survey. Why? Because no action was done. So
Hmm.
why do something if no action is done? Don't ask me what's wrong if you're not going to fix what's wrong.
Hmm.
And I've been in cultures where they've had the same issue for 10 years, and you're like, well,
Hmm.
again, you're doing the same thing.
Hmm.
So you have to tackle what's the biggest problem, just like you would with anything else. Go
Hmm.
after the biggest, hardest thing first and say, okay, I heard you. What can we do to fix it? And again,
Hmm.
it's going to be the 80%. So the majority of that survey, right? So 80% of that survey. And then you say, okay, so this is the issue. And you go back. How can we fix it? Give us ideas to fix it.
Right.
If you just come up with a plan yourself or with one or two people, then you're still not hitting that majority. And
Hmm.
that's where companies fail. So they make this big, huge plan. This is what we're going to do this quarter, this year.
Yeah.
And then it starts out great and then it stops. They don't do it anymore.
Right. All right.
And that's
So
what falls and it fails.
yeah.
So,
So yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll let you finish your
yeah,
point, but
yeah.
there's
So
something I want to
you have, yeah, that's right.
digress.
You have to follow through with whatever plan you do.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying you don't have to pivot. You can pivot if you
Hmm.
need to, but always follow through with what the plan is because then that builds confidence with your team.
Hmm.
And when you have confidence, you can what? Speak up. That's the whole point.
Right. Okay, and this is important for you guys to understand, and we're going to close you guys out soon. But when she says biggest problem, the biggest problem is not money. All right, guys, the biggest
It's
problem
not.
is people. It is people. Say it again for the folks in the back. Calm down. You guys saw how excited I was this morning. All right, I'm making sure it's clearly communicated to you all right now. The biggest problem you have is not the money. The biggest
Mm,
problem you have is the people. All right, you guys
mm,
heard it nice and clear. It's the people. It is the people that is going to lead to certain profits being made, and those profits need to be distributed the right way. And then you can start talking about money. But money is not your biggest problem.
yeah.
And when you're talking about everything that she laid out in terms of tackling what the biggest issue is, tackling the quote unquote 80%, too often do you guys not equip yourself with the knowledge and equip yourself with the skill to understand, hey, my biggest problem isn't that I didn't make or I didn't sell enough product. My problem is I didn't service a certain group of people the best way I needed to service this group of people. So now
Mm,
the money isn't coming in, and all of a sudden I'm going to blame money as the problem. So the kind of the question or the thing I'd love for you to kind of go in on, and we'll kind of get you out of here and we'll let you guys go early today, is when it comes to diagnosing and understanding that people are the problem, how do you get owners and employees or whoever's in the working world, how do you get them to understand that and see that, hey, it's not profit as much as it's just getting the right people to push and be involved with my stuff? And we could use ourselves as an example here, guys.
yeah.
Again, someone I reached out to, I think she was on Podmatch. I actually got an email today saying you've done 114 interviews since I've joined for the past 6 months, but that's besides the point.
That's awesome.
But again, I mean, she was just starting out, her first show and all that kind of stuff. And then boom, you see what we've been able to build over the past couple of weeks here.
Hmm.
It's all been about the people. So I'll give you the
Yep.
last word.
When you think about it, we could say it's not out about money, but
Mhm.
when you're in a company and they provide business results, what is the first thing they go over? They go over what profits they are. How
They
far are
go
they
over profits.
away from meeting profits?
Hmm.
I'm not saying that we can't put that as our goals, but it should never be the first thing. It should be people first mindset,
Yes.
you know. And so, it just like you said, it's definitely not money because you can make $1 million, but if you still hate your job, you hate your job, you hate what you do.
Hmm.
So what are we going to do to fix that? It's
Right.
always going to be people. And the best way to find out is not a survey that you email out, is by having
She just said,
one-on-one
I don't mean to cut you off there, but
yeah.
you had just said that though. That's a point. You had just said that
Yeah.
because if they're not happy, they're not going to do that. I
No, they're
remember
not.
actually being a teacher. Was at a previous center where there was a factory. New teachers left and right, and
Hmm.
they would basically look at stuff and see how short the survey would be and how least amount of time as possible to do it and
Yes.
be done with it. But you don't like that is the issue.
Right.
And, you
That
know what
is
I'm
the issue.
saying?
So the best way I have found to dig deep and find out what was wrong is
Mhm.
to sit down one-on-ones, or even better is have like focus groups. But those focus groups should not be by department. Each focus group that you have should be at different departments, different areas,
Mhm.
because they interact with each other. And so they can get out things that they've had in their
Mhm.
mind, customer
Yes.
service and, sales and routing and sales. And, it doesn't matter what it is. It needs to be very diverse throughout the company. Does
Yes.
it take longer to do it? Yes, it does.
Mhm.
But it's the only way that you're going to get down to the root cause
Mhm.
of what the real issue is. And you're going to find that they don't feel supported. They don't feel
Right.
supported enough to be confident to say something.
Right.
So if
And
you're an individual that works for a company,
uh-huh.
don't wait for that to happen. Speak up,
Yes.
do it, because you could be the person that makes a change.
Mm-hmm. And to and the kind of the final point here too is the longer you wait for this stuff to happen, the worse it's going to get. The worse these things are going to
Hmm.
fester inside of you, whether you're looking at it from the employer standpoint or you're looking at it from the employee standpoint. It's going to be on you as the individual to make sure that your voice is heard. That you're
Heard.
not telling
Yes.
you, it's more than just voting. All right. It's actually making your voice heard in your job, explaining this to them. And if you have to, go get some public speaking lessons, go do
Yes.
something that's going to make it so you're able to communicate whatever it is you need to communicate and articulate it in a way that's respectful. All right, that is the
Yes.
key. And that's one of the things when you guys go watch the video that I made sure I said during the closed mouths don't get fed is you have to be respectful in the way you communicate it, or else you will not get anywhere. If you're an asshole about it, then hey, you don't deserve to have your issues addressed. But if you actually make the effort to express your concerns in a respectful way, respectful at the fact that they're having the conversation, you get so much more in return because you start to really recognize who's about it, who really wants to be there for the long haul, and it just helps you in every single walk of life. So all that
I would
being said,
also add to
oh
that
yeah,
real
go
quick.
ahead.
I would add that recognize what they have done. Because
Yes.
even though it might not be what you need right now,
Mhm.
what the big issue is, they've at
Yeah.
least tried in some way. So part of being respectful is saying, we appreciate that you've done A, B, and C so far, but what about? And that may be easier too. You kind of sandwich it in to kind of
Hmm.
speak up and see, what it is that you're trying to say. But
Yeah.
always acknowledge the fact that there has been some effort.
Yes, we used to call that. I was a trainer for a company named Positive Coaching Alliance, and we used to call that the 5-to-1 ratio: five
Mhm.
positives to one negative. So sprinkle in all your five positives, and then give them that one negatives, and then you're able to see it. You're able to see what the issue
Mhm.
is, and if you really are a boss or an owner that's about his or her business, then you're going to
Mhm.
fix that one issue because someone had the
Yes.
ability to approach you in a respectable way. So
Away.
all that being
Absolutely.
said, do you have any announcements at all that you'd like to put out there? Anything until next week?
Until
All right,
next
good.
week, if you need help
Yeah.
with your culture and
Mm.
speaking up, reach me at kim@ardentHRsolutions.com. Thanks for watching today. It's my
Yes, ma'am.
pleasure as
Yes,
usual.
ma'am. And as always, Patreon link again. I'm serious about this, folks. Patreon.com
Awesome.
slash as144. The this thing is gonna get built and the content, if you really like my content, if you really like what I'm all about, is going to be exclusively there. Again, I'm not in the business anymore of serving the freeloaders. I have done enough for you freeloaders. You guys have enough out there on me. I want to get to the folks that really are willing to make an investment. So That's where most of the stuff is going. That's the direction we're heading to in 2025. So all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.